Yeah, let's do this. All right, guys. So normally, this is just an audio, but I'm here, and I figured I'd just do. So this is our "What Does It Mean" series. It's basically how we match react, what happened, what does it mean to us, kind of go from there. So if you like this type of content, leave a like, subscribe to us. We do primarily Canadian and African content, but Canada just lost to Mexico 2-0 in the semifinals of the Nations League. And what actually went right? I don't, I don't know, but we can try to talk about it. I think I think we can try to talk about it, and we'll kind of go from there. So let's start. I think there's a lot of points in this game. We didn't play well, but we played frustratingly terrible, like to the point where you did just enough to tease you that you could do something, but then we didn't end up doing it. And that was the frustration with this game overall. It started early. This game honestly is eerily reminiscent of how I felt after they lost to the US in the Nations League Finals a few years back, where the US was just more clinical on the day, and they were able to be a little bit more clinical there, and we were not. So let's talk about the game. Let's go to our starting 11. So we had Dane St. Clair in the back, Alistair Johnston, Moise Bombito, Derek Cornelius, Alfonso Davies. Then you had our boy Steph Eustachio with Ishmael Kone, Jonathan Osorio, Ali Ahmed, Jonathan David, and Kyle Laren. That was your starting 11. And to be perfectly honest, on the live stream I did before, can we have a conversation about Jonathan Osorio? Can we also have a conversation about Ishmael Kone? And can we have a conversation about Jonathan David? When they are trying to build, they occupy the same space. Osorio is an older 10. Kone is an 8 that wants to push into the 10 space. And Jonathan David, wants to move back and touch the ball when he hasn't been involved. He's that 10 who wants to move back. So ultimately, what starts to happen is you start to get a cluster of just players in one area. And that was a concern. I don't know if Kone and David work well together just because of that. When you throw in a player like Jonathan Osorio, it gets furthermore like that. So I'm not sure if that was a good start off the bat. And I was a little bit questioning it. Once we reached the point where the game started, it went downhill quickly. First minute of the game, a long throw in our end from Alistair Johnson gets won by Mexico. Ball gets played out to the front of the box. Davies goes down for a block, lunges down for a block. It deflects Raul Jimenez, who's moving, gets the rebound, one touch past Dane St. Clair. It's 1-0, and we're 1 minute into the game. It's last time we had a game like that, it was the Gold Cup 2021, where the US scored in the first minute, and it was just Canada creating chances, but just not. I keep on thinking of games like this. So we went through the lineup, but we have to acknowledge the team. It's something we always do. Mexico outcoached us. We have to accept this and acknowledge this. They out starting 11 us. Their strategy worked. Now, Canada did help them. Don't get me wrong, they did help them. But Mexico did a great job in making it tough. Once they got that goal to start the game, then it was just a matter of just slogging the game out, making it tough. The refs were giving cards. We had more cards in the first half of this game than the last game we had. Almost. We had 5 yellow cards in the first game. By the end of the halftime, Canada's back line, save for Derek Cornelius, all had yellows. Bombito, Johnson, Davies, they all had yellows. Now, getting into the 10th minute, you have what looked like a penalty, but it's called a foul on Derek Cornelius. I don't know how that's not a penalty. Maybe that changes the course of the game, perhaps. But it is certainly a question that a lot of us were asking, like, how is that game progressing the way that it is? And but I think the frustrating thing with this game, there's one thing I go back to, and we talk about this. I'll talk about this once we go through the flow of the game and whatnot. So it goes on. You have a yellow from Bombito in the 18th, Davies in the 22nd, and Alistair Johnson in the 33rd. Alexis Vega gets one in the 27th minute, and Johan Vasquez gets one in the 43rd. No subs at halftime for either side. And Huerta and Luis Robo come in for Canada in the for Mexico in the 54th minute. You had Schaffelberg on for Osorio in the 60th, which I figured would be Ahmed on for Tejan and Choinière on for Kone. And then you had Tenny on for Kyle Larin and then Jebison for Stachio. And then Quinones comes on for Mexico. But in the 75th minute, after Reyes gets a yellow card, free kick opportunity, Raul Jimenez scores his second of the game, 2-0. Mexico wins. And Mexico, I think, to me, outcoached Canada, and they played the style that they wanted. That's how they were going to win that game. They weren't going to win the game where it was going to be back and forth. Mexico can play that, but they didn't have the horses to want to play that type of a game. So the lead certainly helped, but afterwards it was just slogging the game, taking the flow out. It wasn't your classic CONCACAF game, but it was a more refined, right? And I'm not even trying to say this in a derogatory way. How they were breaking up play, how they were tackling. The ref was it started off being questionable, but I could at least appreciate the ref was consistent. But to me, the story of this game is Canada's opportunities or lack thereof. If you look at some of the stats, we're going to go to Google Stats here and kind of talk about what we see here. Now, according to Google, it's 11 shots to 8 for Canada, 3 shots on target, 2 goals, 1 shot on target for Canada. It was a free kick in the first half. Alphonso Davies, center left, puts it right into Malagon. That's the only shot Canada had on frame. Earlier in the match, Jonathan David has a shot at the top of the box, skies it over the net. Davies has 3 free kicks that either go straight to the goalkeeper, left, right, or center. Kyle Larin misses the frame altogether. I think if you're a Canadian fan, the most frustrating thing about this game is that Canada built up. They teased you with the build-up enough but once they reached the final third, they didn't even have. It's not that they had nothing to show for, right? This would have been a different game if, say, Malagon makes 4 saves, and you're saying, okay, yeah, this is the goalie had a good day. They didn't really try the goalie. None of the goalies were really tested. By default, yes, Dane St. Clair was tested because he lets in 2 goals. One's a free kick with, Raul Jimenez is him. Jimenez is him. But the first goal, it's a deflection 1v1 on the goalie. You'd hope your goalie makes a save. You need a save there. They didn't really recover from there. Then you saw them getting frustrated. You saw Mexico starting to be nicky with them. Nicks, cuts, pushes. And Canada was getting unraveled in that spot. And then they almost score a second goal in the first half. And it turns to that situation. It's offsides. But 11 shots on 1 on frame, if you have what many consider is the best 9 in the region, and nothing he put hit the frame of the goal. You have Kyle Larin, who will have a conversation about players and their time around the national team, was invisible. Effectively, the only players who were really visible were the players who picked up cards because you're like, okay, there's a card there. Ali Ahmed didn't have the same confidence on the ball as he had before. Out wide, they didn't have enough wingers, which is something that some people were bringing up. Where was the winger depth? Unless you were going to play a different formation, you're going to try to play a 4-4-2, even if you played a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. Your second winger would have had to have been Jonathan David. Parce que David, au moins à la vitesse. If you're going to put, yeah, there's a lot of raw emotions. But ultimately, this game to me is the set pieces and the shots. They were terrible with those. And that to me is the story of the game. Yes, you see the possession numbers look great. That's all Mexico sitting back. The passing accuracy looks great. More passes, that's Mexico sitting back. But the 7 corners, and between 7 corners, 4 direct dish free kicks, between 11 set pieces, they produced 1 shot on frame. I almost want to say they choked, but I don't know if that's even fair because I don't think they even chewed their food. And it's tough, right? You really wanted to see Canada as a Canadian, again, Afrikaans, you wanted them to come away with something, especially when you see earlier in the day that Panama got past the US. You're like, okay, this is the opportunity. But the frustrating part was they did just enough for you to think you were still in the game. But really, if you look back at it, it was empty calories. And that was the frustrating thing. It makes me want to go back to the conversation that March had with the team after the Copa America, which is this is the group I want to go with. Is it? Is it really? Because if they are all healthy, right? Let's look at this lineup. If they are all healthy, right? You assume Schaffelberg starts over Osorio, right? And like these 3 players, in theory, in the best spot, so Jonathan David, Kone, Osorio. This is more of a 4-4-2, by the way. Those 3 players want to occupy the same space. You're better off putting David at the 9, putting Kone as in the David spot, and then having someone who's direct. You see what the usefulness of a player like Schaffelberg is. Now, full disclosure, I'm not always the biggest fan of Schaffelberg because I just find that he's just direct. But this feels like a team that can early on can only really function well in transition. That is where they feel the most confident. When you ask them to build, they don't have necessarily, it doesn't feel like they are confident in those first steps, other than a quick first step from Schaffelberg saying him because he's the direct player. Within this lineup, they were, because Osorio was there, they were pushing, and then that's another play you add. They were pushing Davies further up the pitch to be involved. And with that, now you have, it wasn't as congested, but it's a thought process. Like it's not as congested as my fear is, but it's a thought process of if all those players, when Davies gets the ball further up the pitch, he's going to cut inside, which means you have Kone, who was well enough to stay more so central with Eustachio. But now you have David, who is inside and now has to try to find a space. You have Laren, who wasn't always making the right movements. And then you have Osorio, who Osorio was there. And so you have a group, a cluster of players who all want to try to occupy the same space. And credit for Mexico for saying that's how you're going to beat us because you can't. And they didn't. So Mexico goes on to the finals. They play Panama Sunday afternoon. Canada plays the US in the consolation prize derby of animosity between neighboring countries. I don't need to go through all that. You all know what it is. But we do need to talk about the squad. We're going to be less than a year and a couple months, probably 14 months away from the World Cup. And I look at players, we are about to potentially, Canadians are about to enter in the warped world that was what the US went through, which was, so who's our one right now? Dane could still be good. He's been consistent in the MLS, but we've seen him in two big moments. Just against Suriname, he wasn't tested too much, but we saw him at the Gold Cup after Borjan left. And then we also saw him against Mexico here. Now, 1v1 versus Raul, you'd want him to make a save. And then the free kick, you want him to make a step a little bit earlier. And he has the length to try to stop that, but he doesn't. After him, Crepeau is up and down. Are they going to give Tom McGill a run? Are we now about to reach the point where the U.S. was after their first Nations League win, where it's like, it's Ethan Horvath? No. It's Derek Steffen. No. It's Matt Turner. We're about to enter that world. Have fun, guys. It's going to be a blast. Yes, Canada lost. Also, randomly, because I have to bring this up. Yes, Canada lost. I look forward to people on Twitter complaining about Davies playing hero ball in a game like this. He doesn't play hero ball, though. Because what happens is he's the only player who moves to space. So then they give him the ball and he tries to create something. And yes, does he have one touch too many? I agree. But ultimately, who else is trying to create in those moments? Or are they moving? No one's even moving the ball around to do anything. It's the ball is being moved in one direction and he's attacking the space on the other side. They see that, they move the ball into him. Davies isn't the problem. I know it's going to come up because it's the end of the game. No one's doing anything, and Davies has the ball, and he's losing the ball. Therefore, he's hero balling. That's not the point. There are bigger issues than that, and that's not even a real issue, at least to me. It's properly building this team. Right? Worst case scenarios, the U.S. can at least say, look, we are missing our top 3 strikers. So, yeah. We brought arguably the best striker in the region, Kyle Larin, which is a conversation which we'll get to in a second. Kone Eustachio, and your back line is arguably one of the best back lines in the region. And we produced one shot on frame. It's disappointing. And if you're Canada, you need them to win something to at least feel validated in this group. Maybe they don't. Someone keeps on messaging me that Belgium is a cautionary tale for the next group. They're also a cautionary tale of what did they win? They were very talented, but what do they have to show for it other than a semifinal run at the World Cup, which is worthy? But that's it. What does Canada have? Semifinal run of the Copa, a semifinal run of the Gold Cup, a semifinal run, and a finals appearance at the CONCACAF Nations League. I think moving forward, I want to see how Marsh adjusts. The Sunday matchup is going to be interesting, how he wants to play it. I think there's healthy players there, but he is every coach has their favorites. I think I saw a comic was I think it's too early for him to be attached to players, but he did say these are my 23, and the other players have to outwork you, and you have to work hard to be in this position. So he's going to reward showing up for camps, or is he going to reward form? We'll find out. But for me, I mean, Bombito is your best player on the day, and that's just because everyone else was so poor. Kyle Larin is a conversation that has to happen. Like, I don't know. I left 2022 thinking that Kyle Larin had to be in the, and I mean this no disrespect, but by the 2026 World Cup, Kyle Larin had to be in the Lucas Cavallini role by that point. And yes, he's still playing at a high level, but he has nothing to show for it for Canada. He has 1 goal. I would like them to figure out what their answer is at striker. If David's going to be your de facto 10, you have Jebison, you have Promise David, you have Theo Bear. Try them, see what you have. Osorio is another conversation where I don't know if he's necessary. I don't know. Because in the middle, Osorio's a player you want to play in the middle off of that, or you want to play him as that second striker. But as a winger, I don't think he's it. I don't think he should be in the running because if you look at the midfielders, even Eustachio, Kone, Schwenya, Seeger, to me, I think those are your solid four, right? Out wide, Ahmed has to get out of his head in this. Whether he was playing scared or maybe he wasn't fully fit, who knows? But you need more from Ali Ahmed. But we are going to be evaluating the side to see who stands out and if the form matches what we see. That's all we can really do. It's a missed opportunity for Canada because they needed something to really validate this group and stuff. Ultimately, Mexico was the better. It's not even that Mexico was the better side. Mexico implemented their game plan and basically ran it to perfection. They probably left a goal or two left on the pitch, but they gave enough for you to think that Canada was close enough. But really, if you look at the game, weren't good at all. So Mexico plays Panama on Sunday. Canada plays the U.S. Guys, let me know what you thought about this game. I've talked enough, as always. I'm gonna stop talking right here.